Hey guys, Desolator Magic back with the video you've been waiting for. It's time to reveal my new modern deck titled The Black Death. Now, SEAL Team 6 is a little sensitive to not having its combo go off, and really, Beholder was only designed to beat Amulet Bloom and Splinter Twin, which are no longer a problem. So with people finally switching from combo decks to creature decks, it's time to build an anti-creature deck, which is exactly what I did. Let's start with the kill spells, which there's an awful lot of. First, we've got Bile Blight, one of my favorite cards printed recently. Really, one of my favorite black removal spells in general, because it's not just a single target -3/-3, it's potentially multi-target because every creature with the same name gets -3/-3, and it's only 2 mana. The best part is it's an instant, so you can use it for all kinds of combat-related tricks, or you can just camp out to see if they summon a third merfolk with the same name on their turn instead of killing it on your turn. Next up, we've got Languish, which is just a straight-up -4/-4 for 4 sorcery, so you have to launch it on your turn, and you might take some of your creatures with it, but not necessarily. This will kill just about anything. And as you may have noticed, Bile Blight gets past anything other than hexproof, and Languish gets past absolutely anything, so protection from black doesn't matter. Nor does Indestructible. Speaking of spells that really effectively kill stuff, we've also got Killing Wave. Yes, it's a sorcery, but it's pretty darn hilarious. You pay 1 black and then whatever you want for X. Usually it's about 3 to 5, so we'll just say 5. You start with your creatures. So let's say you have 2 creatures on the field. You go to the first one and say, am I going to pay 5 life to keep it on the field? Or am I going to let it be sacrificed? And then you go to your next creature and make the same decision. Am I going to pay 5 additional life, or am I going to let it be sacrificed? So I usually just keep the most important giant creature and then let them start deciding. Now let's say they have a line of 8 elf creatures and then you cast this for 3. Well, it's a little bit of a problem because if they paid for all of them, that's 24 life, and you've probably been bashing them in the face since the game began. So this card really punishes people for having too many small creatures that aren't very important. So yeah, they're going to keep the really important ones, but then they're going to lose a ton of life, and this deck has a lot of large flyers. Half the time they'll leave something on the field, and without missing a beat, Go for the Throat comes up, which is the next kill card in the deck. There's a lot of 2-cost kill cards. I just picked this one. There's another one for double black that kills anything that's not a werewolf, zombie, or vampire, which, believe it or not, does come up. And then there's Doomblade, which is anything not black. That's a little bit less flexible. But anyway, it just destroys target non-artifact creature. That's great at taking out the big guys, and the rest of them take out massive lines of things. And that's it for the kill spells. The only other non-creature card left in the deck is Eternal Thirst, which only costs 2, which is not bad, and it's an aura. You can attach it to technically the enemy creatures. I wouldn't, but you put it on one of yours and it gains lifelink, and then whenever an opponent's creature dies, you may put a 1/1 counter on the creature that has Eternal Thirst on it. And it doesn't care if they're tokens or not, so remember, you're killing massive lines of things. So if you happen to get this out and then wipe out a whole bunch of creatures with the Bile Blight, you're going to have like an 8/8, 9/9, maybe a 10/10 creature out there with lifelink. So swing once, yeah, they might take it out with a Death Toucher, they might, have to Path to Exile it, but it just forces them to deal with it immediately. And this is a very cheap, very early game card. I absolutely love it. Next up, we've got a creature kill card hybrid. It's Gatekeeper of Malakir. It's a 2/2 for 2, but if you pay 1 additional black as the kicker, as soon as he enters the battlefield, target player sacrifices a creature of their choice. You might have noticed this whole deck gets around Indestructible, Hexproof, protection from black. I mean, you're just going to start removing stuff, whether they want you to or not. Next up, we've got Arrogant Bloodlord. Not real important to the deck. You could swap it out if you really wanted. It's just a 4/4 for 3. The downside is that if it becomes blocked by a creature with power 1 or less, so basically 1 or 0, then destroy Arrogant Bloodlord at the end of combat. That doesn't come up real often, and if it does, just leave it on defense. I just like 4 damage for 3, but there are other creatures that could take its place if you just have 1 black creature that costs 3 that you absolutely adore, or even one that costs 2. Next up, we have one of the most powerful black 3-cost creatures ever printed. It's Nyxathid. When he comes into play, you choose an opponent, and then it's a 7/7, but he gets -1/-1 for each card in the chosen player's hand. So if they have 3 cards left in hand, he's a 4/4. So as the game goes on, he gets bigger without you having to do anything, kill anything, anything, feed in any mana, give them any auras, nothing. And of course, if I had $1 for every time Nyxathid was a 3/3 and somebody tried to lightning bolt him, but as soon as lightning bolt leaves their hand, he becomes a 4/4 and they get all pissed off that they wasted a lightning bolt, I'd be a rich, rich man. Next up for 4 mana, we've got Squelching Leeches, which in this deck is bare minimum a 4/4 when you cast it, because his power and toughness are equal to the number of swamps you control, and the entire deck is swamps. So over time, theoretically, he gets bigger and bigger and bigger for free. You don't have to do anything. That's great. I mean, I've had them get up to a 7/7, 8/8. You know, sometimes the enemy was planning on doing something, and then all of a sudden he's bigger, so they can't, and it just works out great. He's just a real heavy hitter. Now, there are some potentially better replacements, even ones that cost 3, so I just put him in there because I had him. But he really, really is solid in combat. I mean, he's hard to remove, and he is gigantic. But the number 1 best creature in the deck by far, and the only reason that I almost don't consider this a budget deck, is Phyrexian Obliterator for 4 mana, and that's 4 black, which is why I did not mix colors in this deck. You get a 5/5 Trampler, so he must have a downside, right? Wrong. I mean, he's like 35 to 45 bucks a card if you want to count that as a downside, but otherwise, whenever a source, any source, doesn't have to be combat damage, it just has to be a source, deals damage to Phyrexian Obliterator, that source's controller sacrifices that many permanents. So there goes, 5 of their lands if they decided to try and roast him, or there goes their entire line of creatures. I mean, if they were about to lose the game and they had to chump block this guy just to bring the trample down a little bit lower, and they accidentally dealt 3 damage to him with like a 3/5 or something, they have to sacrifice 3 permanents after that creature is already destroyed for blocking him. This is quite possibly the most powerful black card ever printed. I mean, there's probably some pretty nuts stuff up in the 7/8 mana cost, but I mean, come on, for 4 mana, this is just outrageous. This honestly makes Wurmcoil Engine look like crap. I mean, when was the last time Wurmcoil Engine took out a whole line of 5 lands? I mean, come on. If your opponent is playing Red Burn and you get him out, they just lost the game unless they can beat you before you can swing, I guess, a couple more times. And finally for 5 mana, and there are only 2 of these in the deck because, I mean, 5 mana is a little much in Modern, we've got the 5/4 flyer Archfiend of Depravity. Now, he is flying, he does deal 5 damage, so he's a finisher, but his effect is just as good. At the beginning of each opponent's end step, that player chooses up to 2 creatures he or she controls, then sacks the rest. So basically, at the end of your opponent's turn, they have to sacrifice down to 2 creatures on the battlefield. Or I should say on their side of the battlefield, not total. That would be insane. So if you're playing some kind of deck with like flashback creatures or just creatures that keep coming back from the graveyard over and over and over, problem solved. So you add in 23 swamps, and that's the deck, although just specifically to beat Merfolk, because they like to turn your swamps into islands, and if they do that early game, you are 3 turns behind. I mean, honestly, because there's a lot of 3 black cost, a lot of, well, not a lot of, but some 4 black cost. Practically everything in the deck costs double black, so you're going to be completely shut down with an island. It's practically a useless card. It's like them destroying your land. Then if they enchant 2 of your swamps to make them islands, you're just dead. So I put in a full 4 Urborgs just because people at my LGS like to play Merfolk. So yep, that's the deck, plain and simple. You just remove in mass every single thing that they bring out and then start pounding them with gigantic creatures, and if you're lucky enough, you're also gaining life and gaining counters every time something dies. The other funny thing is most modern decks don't tend to run more than 8 creature removals, so you bring out Phyrexian Obliterator, oh my gosh, I have to path to exile that. Then you bring out Archfiend of Depravity, oh my gosh, a 5 damage flyer, I have to path that. Then you bring out Squelching Leeches, oh my god, it's a 7/7, I have to path that. I mean, they're going to run out of removal spells in a hurry. So let's say they start bringing in, stuff like Abrupt Decay. Well, your creatures are huge, first of all. That's a terrible example. But some other 2-cost removal or another exile spell or some kind of, Devouring Light or something. Nobody plays that. I don't know. We'll say Go for the Throat. They brought in Go for the Throat because they liked your copy so much. Well, there's just too darn many targets. I mean, then you can split it. You could have Phyrexian Obliterators on the field, but I've also got Nyxathid out there, and he has Eternal Thirst on him. So which one are you going to try to exile? I mean, it's just a no-win scenario. The only thing this deck lost to was creatures that keep coming back over and over and over from the graveyard, and even then I beat them, somewhat reliably, I guess you could say. I think I lost like maybe 40-50% of the games I played against that type of deck. And then Red Burn and Storm, because they beat everything. I mean, there's just nothing that can beat them. If you get out an Eternal Thirst early enough, though, you will beat them. And it obviously has trouble with like affinity artifacts, all kinds of gimmicky win on turn 4 or 5 combo decks, you know, just stupid crap like that. But anybody who relies on creatures, which is the vast majority of modern decks, they are going to lose to this deck most of the time. Now remember, it has 23 lands because you need to get up into the high mana cost as quickly as possible. You can't do this, oh, it's 1/3 of my deck, you know, 20 lands versus 60. You can't do that because it'll take way too long. Plus, it doesn't literally have landfall, but I mean, you drop in a swamp, you might be making some stuff bigger. You might be making like Squelching Leeches bigger. And so, yeah, you really want to stick to 23 lands. Maybe even 24, but 23 seemed to be the number where I stopped getting land screwed. And I might as well cover the sideboard. This is real loose. I mean, the sideboard's just whatever. I mean, I always tell people the sideboard should be whatever you lose to or whatever you see the most often at your local gaming store or the tournaments that you go to. So I put in Virulent Plague because a couple people play like token decks. So you get that out -2 until the end of the game basically on every single token. They'll probably just hit the battlefield and drop dead most of the time. Then of course I put in Hero's Downfall to take care of Planeswalkers. That one's pretty obvious, went down in price a lot, so that's cool. Then I put in Murderous Cut if you just don't need to kill massive piles of stuff, so you could take out like a Bile Blight maybe and put in Murderous Cut and just start taking out the real big guys that they bring out. And then the fourth spot, I mean, maybe Mutilate if you really want, maybe Drown in Sorrows if you kind of want to go the other way with it. Haven't really decided on that one, so just whatever you feel like. I mean, you could technically put in 4 swamps and take out Urborg if you know they're not playing Merfolk, so you don't accidentally start the game with 3 Urborgs or something. And that really is the entire deck, but I will mention that there are 3 creatures that you could swap in if you so desire. There's Bloodsoaked Champion. He's a 2/1 for 1 that just keeps coming back out of the battlefield over and over and over, which is nice if you're the one that killed him with Languish. Then instead of the Archfiend, you could put in Drana for your big old flying power, you know, dropping counters and everybody's cool, helps boost Eternal Thirst, helps keep your creatures alive in case of Languish, and the first strike ability is actually, it does come up quite often for, you know, it turns from a creature trade to I'm going to kill you. Then we've got a creature that's so stupidly annoying that I'm considering mainboarding it in the place of at least some Squelching Leeches. It's Geralf's Messenger. He does cost triple black, and whenever the whole entire cost is his amount in black, you know it's going to be good. He does enter the battlefield tapped, but I mean, you don't leave them with any creatures on the battlefield, so who cares? And when it enters the battlefield, target opponent loses 2 life, so there's nothing they can do about that other than cancel the summoning. Then you've probably heard of how annoying Persist is. Well, this is the opposite of Persist. It's Undying. When this creature dies, if it has no +1/+1 counters on it, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it. So the first time it dies, it comes back into the battlefield, then it comes back in tapped, of course. Oh, look, they lost 2 more life because he literally left the battlefield and then came back out of the graveyard, and now he's a 4/3. In fact, if you have 2 of these on the battlefield and they have 4 life left, you could just Languish yourself. Oh, look, they both died. Oh, look, they both came back. You took 4 damage. I win the game. I mean, this guy is really, really powerful. In fact, if you can't afford Phyrexian Obliterators because they're like I said, $35 to $45 a piece, hello, throw this guy in. He's not that easy to find, but he is only about $3 to $4 a piece, so that's not bad at all. I mean, he's almost as good as Phyrexian Obliterator. Now, if you cut Phyrexian Obliterator for Geralf's, and then you take out Urborg because nobody around you plays crap that screws with your lands, you know, Merfolk basically, then you just cut the deck down to like, I don't even know, I didn't even total it up, but I'd say $25 to $35 tops. I mean, if even that. I mean, just looking at the deck list, Nyxathid was about $4 or $5 a piece. Languish is like $1.50. I don't see much else above 50 cents. I mean, Killing Wave was like $1.50, I think, maybe $2 a piece, but that's it. The rest is just all 50 cent to $1 tops cards, and that's fantastic because this is so powerful. I mean, this deck just, I won about 75 to 80% of the matches in general against just blind opponents on Xmage. That's how good this deck is. So let me know if you guys bring it to your local gaming store and just absolutely dominate with it. If you see nothing but creature decks, especially big lines of creatures. I love big lines of creatures like elves. Oh my god, that just makes my day. Or if you have any improvements, because this is a very flexible deck, unlike Beholder, which you cannot change one card in that deck without completely ruining all the math and all the strategy and everything. But this deck, you could swap anything out for anything, it'll pretty much work. So definitely have fun with this, and let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any good results with it. Let me know if you have any bad results with it, or any improvements. And I will see you guys next video.